back up again if you'd like to, or maybe if you're done speaking, that's fine also.
The health department's online and they'd like to speak.
And that, after these guys are done, I'll go next. Well, ladies, would you want to add anything to the conversation that we had before lunch break? Okay, well, go ahead and.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a lot to add. I just hope that we've kind of clarified lottery and our relationship with the Gaming Commission and the coalition. If you have questions, please always feel free to reach out to us and we'd be happy to sit down and have that conversation. But I do think that's it. And thank you for having us here today. The work that the coalition does is really good work. So it's great to be here and walk you through it.
Well, thank you for explaining the information you gave us. It's obviously, certainly is very helpful. Sarah, do you have anything you wanted to add?
You bet. Thank you, co-commissioners. Wait a minute, yep. Howard. I just wanted to clarify a couple of quick things for you with self-exclusion. Online sports wagering is a very easy, as Mr. Pickard was talking to you about, it's easy to self-exclude those people because they have that know your customer and they have all those data points, and it's easy to say this person has self-excluded and we can easily ban them. I have a couple of those online companies, they'll get a false positive and they'll say, no, you can't gamble here because you're on a self-exclusion list. That person will have to reach out and confirm that they're not on our self-exclusion and then reach back out to the, so there is a lot of protections there in the online world. In the in-person world, it is definitely a little bit more difficult. But as soon as that information for self-exclusion is completed and sent out, the operators of the off-track betting of those locations, they immediately are put onto their self-exclusion list that they don't go to theirs. They also don't advertise to those people as well. So they make sure they take them out of that realm as much as possible. There are a few of the skill-based amusement folks people too that will take that and do what they can to the best of their ability. So I wanted to make sure that that was there as well, that self-exclusion is there. The other point I wanted to talk about is September through the American Gaming Association is Responsible Gambling Awareness Month, and March is the Problem Gambling Awareness Month through the National Council on Problem Gambling. And they put out different information, and that is something that I advertise, put out there, I send to operators and stuff, and they are very on top of it, of putting out that information to their customers as well, so that that information isn't just coming from the commission, it's coming from them as operators as well. Anytime you go to one of their locations, they have pamphlets, they have brochures, they have posters of how to get help if this isn't the place for you to be. They train their staff on how to recognize folks as well at those off-track betting locations. So I just wanted to say that we do have a really great working relationship with them in those areas, and I would stand for any other questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Task Force, anybody have any questions they wish to ask? Seeing none, so we're going to move on, and if you don't mind sitting up here, because I don't know what's going to happen with the Department of Health conversation, but maybe there's a reason.
Absolutely.
So you can leave if you want to, but
We'll stay.
Karen, could you bring in Department of Health? Oh, hello, Department of Health. Could you introduce yourself and let's hear what your testimony?
Good afternoon, committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. My name is Stephanie Sandoval. I'm the Public Health Division Senior Administrator, and I wanted to just come and offer a couple of pieces of information. The first thing I want to do, though, is make a distinction between the $200,000 that the Wyoming Lottery Commission has and the $300,000 per year that is made available to the Department of Health for distribution to the counties. So my comments will primarily focus on the $300,000, and you've heard a little bit about this already, but I'll just expound on it a little bit. The Wyoming Lottery, our agency does work with them, And that funding has provided training for some of our staff in the past. I think it's also gone to local mental health providers at the local level. So focusing on the 300,000, that funding does become available to us. And as you may have seen in statute, that funding is then made available to counties. And so we distribute that based on a population basis of those who are 18 and above. And we carry out our role in distributing that when that funding comes to us. We make it available to counties. I did want to also make a distinction there. It's actually not included in the prevention funding that we have for counties, where there's a focus on substance misuse, tobacco prevention, and suicide prevention. So those areas, as you may know, we do have programmatic areas in those subject matters in the Department of Health, and we do not have a program specifically targeted to problematic gambling or gaming. And the statute requires that we make the gambling funding available to address problematic gambling at the local level. So we do not include that in the contracts that we put out for those other prevention areas that I mentioned. So essentially what we do, the 300,000 comes to us. We calculate what would be available to each county based on their population that's 18 and up. And then we distribute that. And that's the funding sheet that you saw that Jeremiah mentioned. And then we are able to work with the counties on ways that they might want to use that funding. However, we do work with Sarah Beth quite a bit in terms of what the resources are, since we don't have subject matter expertise in those areas. And so we've appreciated working with Sarah Beth and her colleagues, as well as Jeremiah. And I think we've already covered on why the funding that you see on the 2025 sheet is higher than 300,000, since that money is continuously appropriated to us. It does stay in that bucket of funding to be redistributed in that following year. Some counties have used the funding, as you've heard, some are not using it. I think currently 17 counties have accepted last year's funding. We're currently in the process of letting counties know, here's how much is available to you now if you'd like to receive it. What counties typically do is they'll invoice us when they are ready. If they've used that money, they'll send us an invoice, then we'll pay out of their bucket of funds. Let's see, I think that was all I wanted to mention. If you want just a brief sample of what counties have let us know they use the funding for, they have used it to train some of their local mental health providers. They have used the funding to put out public information and increase awareness. And then we do have Laramie County that's getting ready to work on an environmental scan to really understand if there is a problem. I can touch on that data piece a little bit more. We heard from the Lottery Commission that they have a hotline and they collect data from the calls. We don't have a data collection mechanism in our public health area around problematic gambling. So we really don't have data in that area, but we are happy to take any data that the Lottery Commission has. But I think with that, that's really a summary. I think you've heard that there are probably better ways to distribute the funding and make it more efficient. We're happy to stay as kind of that middleman. We're also happy to not be in that. It's 300,000 a year. Really, we just want to be helpful in whatever mechanism the committee and the legislature decides that should be. So with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Sandoval? I have one first. Just could you clarify about the money that, where the money goes for the counties that don't accept the money? How is that then distributed, or maybe it's not? Could you please explain what happens in that case where they don't take the money? Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So that money that's not claimed will just roll over to the next year. Then it's included in that total amount that's available for counties. So then we make that new amount available after we get that next 300,000 each year.
All right, thank you. And we have a question from co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for joining us today. When you're taking in calls from things like the 988 line, do you ever find that individuals mention problem gambling?
Madam Chairman, so the 988 line is actually run out of a different division, and I don't know if they have that specific information tracked, but I'm happy to follow up and I can send you more information on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Oh, Representative Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is who makes the determination at the county, of the counties that decide to reject the money? Who makes that determination?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Webb, I would defer to the counties on that, but I believe it's probably the county commissioners. Once they receive the information, they probably have a meeting at the local level to determine if they want to accept that funding or not.
Can I do a follow-up?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Is there a stipulation on what that money can be spent for? I have a little bit of a hard time hearing. Maybe you went over that, but if you could repeat that, if you said it, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Webb, the statute reads that the funding should be distributed to the counties for the purpose of funding county health programs to prevent and treat problematic gambling behavior. So that is the provision in the statute that covers how the money can be spent.
Yeah, thank you. I think we can, you're good with that, Jeremiah? Well, you shouldn't have left. We could have just stayed there. All right. Are you good, Representative Webb? Okay, thank you. All right, well, thank you, Department of Health, for your testimony, Sarah. And that'll conclude this part of the topic. I want to bring it up for public. Oh, you want to say something? Okay. No. Speak now.
Okay, for public comment, what Ms. Sandoval was just talking about the Laramie County scan, it has been completed and Data Corps did that, and she is in the room if you would like to ask her information about the environmental scan that they did in Laramie County, where they got some really great data about what gambling looks like in Laramie County, if you would like to.
Well, thank you. She can come up during public comment and explain if she wishes to explain. And that, so thank you for your testimony. Want to, at this point, call up people in the audience or online who would like to make a public comment about what the last topic was. Oh, Representative Davis, good day to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission here. One thing that I'd like to...
Representative, could you please state your name?
Representative Bob Davis, House District 47, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.
Davis.
One thing that, with the problem gaming, I should say, the one thing that we don't really address is the illegal problem gaming. Some of the articles I've been reading recently on iGaming, it is a bigger issue than the gaming that we enjoy in the state of Wyoming currently, because currently we're in the public. In the public eye, we have our friends, we have things like that. We also have trained individuals at these establishments to recognize that type of stuff. But when you're iGaming, you're doing that on your handheld device in your basement and you're all by yourself. There's no support system. And it's, from what I've read, it's a bigger issue than what we're talking about here. So once again, the illegal side of this is something that we really need to look at and try and tap into if we're looking for additional funds to treat this illness. But this is something that is running under the radar. And so, once again, in order to address that, you have to legalize it, put parameters around it, get a hold of that thing in order to address those issues. But that's my opinion on this. So anyway.
Thank you, Representative Davis.
Thank you,
Any
Mr.
questions for Representative Davis? Any grilling from the House members? No? Okay.
Oh, come on.
You're off.
one.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative. Well, that'll conclude this last section, and we're going to move on to historic horse racing. And with everyone who wishes to talk about this with the Commission and Gaming Commission, please come on up. Because it's leaving you by yourself, huh? Director, continue, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quickly, along the lines of the illegal online operations, you know, a lot of these are marketed as social casinos. Our agency has been looking at these very in-depth. We've been working with the AG's office to get cease and desist letters out to a lot of these companies. Unfortunately, most of these are hosted overseas, and we have little reach with those. But we have been doing a lot of public outreach about these sites to make sure that people are aware, A, that they're illegal, and they can cause a lot of harm. When you start putting in your financial and personal information in these websites that are being hosted overseas, you have no idea where your information is going. Most of the complaints that our office receives is they win these, you know, outrageous jackpots, and then all of a sudden their account's locked up and they have no recourse to get their money. And unfortunately for our office, we can't help these people get their money, because them playing these games in and of themselves is a crime. It's misdemeanor gambling. So the proceeds of their gambling winnings is actually fruits of a crime. So we can't really assist that. I just wanted to clarify that before I started with the HHR stuff. In regards to the HHR, and I know I had covered quite a bit of it earlier, but I just wanted to go over, you know, what these machines actually are. HHR terminals, they're also known as instant racing machines. These are all pari-mutuel wagering devices that use historic horse racing information from previously run races. The races that make up the pools for these machines, they're all from sanctioned, governed racetracks, Churchill Downs, and, you know, actually some of our tracks here are even available on some of these machines. But when you put your money in, your money gets divided up into pools, depending on which themes you're playing. It's important to remember that what you see, which is like the slot machine look, we refer to it as just eye candy. It's just the visual that the player sees to keep them entertained. The important part is the back end of it, which is all being done based on your picks, the player's picks, and the finishing order of the horse races that it selected. So the easiest one, and probably the most predominant one, utilizes 3 race cards. So when you put in your money, it randomly picks 3 race cards out. And really what you're trying to do is pick win, play, show, first, second, and third in all 3 of those races. If you don't do it on your own, go into the help screen and manually handicapping that based on however you want to do it. On that particular system, it goes based on post-time odds. So whatever the wagering public decided were the favorites, the second favorite, the third favorite, on the day that that race was run, that is what the consumer's pick is going to be. So it's just, it does it based on quantifiable data from the historic horse racing machines. With that, when we have folks in the field, that's one of the things that they actually check. You know, they'll get training vouchers. They will put vouchers into these machines. They will play them. They will record after you run or you play a card, it'll pop up and it'll tell you what race that was. It'll show you the finishing order of those horse races, plus your picks. Our folks will document all that. They'll come back to the office and they'll verify that those are true and accurate. We also have a third-party auditor. It's the same one that does our financial audits for the pari-mutuel wagering, the TRPB. They come in twice a year, and they go to every location and do those same kind of audits to ensure that the data on these machines is accurate. One of the other things that our compliance folks do when they do inspections, other than just our general rules, you know, the employees are wearing their proper name badges, everybody's licensed correctly. They will spend a lot of time with these machines to ensure that the software that these machines are running and that is available to the public is software that has been lab tested and approved by our commission. Whenever they present game themes or software for the commission to approve, we get reports from an independent laboratory. The one that we use the most is GLI, which is Gaming Laboratories International. It's probably the most well-known gaming lab in the nation, probably in the world. They have labs across the world. When they break out their lab reports, it actually comes with signatures. We call them software signatures, and it's a unique key for every piece of software in that machine. And when our folks are in the field, they will actually download those keys and compare it to the lab reports to ensure that there has been no changes to that software, and that software is legitimate and approved. The last thing I will touch on for the HHR side is our current numbers. So as it stands today, we have 45 approved off-track wagering locations across the state. Of those 45, there's 41 that are operational. 4 of them are under construction, so they have not opened yet. The total terminal count across the state is, we have 2 different numbers. So the total approved terminals is 5,929 terminals across the state, and the total in play or on the floors is 3,034 terminals. Excuse me, that was in, those numbers are in your packet. The ones in red are locations that are not open yet, that are pending opening. And outside of that, for the HHR side of it, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Task Force, any questions? Oh, we have one. Co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the data on the terminal count. Is there a magical number within your office that says one company can have X amount of machines? Or is it open-ended, that as many places as they can put them, they can have them?
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, so currently, there is not a magical number. There is nothing set in rule or statute that limits the amount of HHR terminals that any one operator can have. So what we have been relying on most recently is the Spectrum Gaming study. We've been looking at the numbers that has presented to us as far as saturation levels for certain communities. And all of the operators also submit independent feasibility studies. So we look at that to see if it's feasible for these locations in these terminals.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My follow-up question has to do with mergers. I know that there's 2 companies that have one parent company at the moment. Have there been any challenges with the commission in overseeing that, or has that gone pretty smoothly?
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, it's gone very smoothly, actually. The commission still views them as 2 separate entities. With the exception of the management group that oversees both of them, our office treats both entities as completely separate. They're licensed separately. Everything that we do internally with those 2 companies is 2 companies.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Any other questions from the task force? Seeing none, I guess continue.
Mr. Chair, that's all I have for HHR, unless there's, like I said, I think I covered a lot of it earlier. But I will be around if there's any other questions that pop
I
up.
appreciate you standing by in case someone has to phone a friend. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Jeremiah, Ryman with the Wyoming County Commissioner Association. And, yeah, you, come on up. Tell us all your great information, Jeremiah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Jeremiah Riemann with the County Commissioners Association again. Mr. Chairman, my involvement in this issue, yeah, if I need to get it closer, let me know. Great. My involvement in this issue started around 2021, early 2021, when Weston County had reached out to me relative to a resolution that they were considering. And in particular, it was a blanket resolution that authorized that particular operator to open one location and any future locations that they might consider for that particular county. And there were questions about whether that was appropriate, whether it was legal for the current commissioners to provide authorization for all future locations. And so I began to work and look into that issue for Weston County, but that issue came up elsewhere, including the county that we're in today, which in fact actually signed a resolution very similar to that. But the issue is much older than that. I'll start in 2014, and this goes back to the days of Commissioner John Kolb and Sweetwater County. And you certainly should correct me where I'm wrong here, but at that particular time, they had authorized one operator to provide for races at facilities in the county and wanted to keep it to just one operator within the county. Ultimately, that went to the courts, and the courts said, you don't have that option. If you allow for one particular operator, you have to allow other operators within your community. So that was the first lob over the fence. And I want to say I tried to find that case for you. I went to the attorneys on both sides. I haven't been able to put my fingers on it, but as soon as I do, I will make sure that you have a copy of that particular court case. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the next case that I want to bring to your attention is one from 2022. It's actually one that I gave a copy to you of. It's in the online materials, and that comes from Campbell County. Now, that ultimate decision from the Supreme Court came in 2023. And really the important operational part of that case is that the Wyoming Supreme Court determined that the Gaming Commission, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but you can find this in the decision, the Gaming Commission has the sole authority over the issuance, administration, and revocation of pari-mutuel and simulcasting permits once county commissioners give their initial approval. So in other words, once the commissioners say yes, they have no other authorities. They've transferred that responsibility to the Gaming Commission. How does that all come about? It really revolves around the particular statutory framework that was put in place a long time ago. And that is in Wyoming Statute 1125-102A, Romanet 7B. I'll just say it again, 1125-102A, Romanet 7B. And that, again, I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, but it says, simulcasting may be conducted only if the Board of County Commissioners grants its approval. That's it. It's pretty simple. I took out a few words there, but that's what it says. And that really brings us to all of the problems. So from Sweetwater County, we know that once the commissioners grant their initial approval, they have to grant other approvals within the county. We also know from Campbell County that you can't modify or revoke a permit once you've authorized it. The only entity that can do that is the Wyoming Gaming Commission, which really means that at the local level, there really isn't a whole lot of control here. Now, there is a question, do county commissioners have the power to impose restrictions or require renewal after they've said yes? I don't know that any of us know that answer. It hasn't been tested. What I can tell you today sitting here is that a number of counties, a number of boards of county commissioners have incorporated limitations within their authorizations. I gave you a copy of Converse County's approval. I think I handed that out this morning. Goshen County, Laramie County, and a few others have adopted a similar framework, but they do so with a big question in the back of their mind of, would that survive a legal challenge? and we just don't know yet. Nobody's challenged one of those authorizations. We have other counties, you saw on the sheet that was given to you from the Gaming Commission that Teton County voters approved historic horse racing back in the 60s or 70s. But the commissioners have never granted approval there, and they don't intend to anytime in the future because they're not certain that if they put in restrictions that they'd like to, how long they can operate, where they can operate within the community, et cetera, whether that would be a legal binding document. So they've just decided we're not going to go there whatsoever. So the voters said yes, but the commissioners are saying no. So with all of that and a lot of angst from the community, from legislators saying, what's going on? Why aren't you doing more, county commissioners? Ultimately, I proposed as interim topic, us looking at providing more local governance in this particular issue. And I did that in 2023, I did that in 2024. We're here today as a result of some of that work. What are some things that we want to see? We want to see the ability to have the ability to revoke or modify permits once they're issued, if there's good reason to do so. We're not looking for the ability to just pull the rug out of a business's efforts to try and do good things in our community, to provide for good jobs, to provide a tax base. So, but if there's reason to, we would like to have that authority. We want some clarification around what are the county and municipal authorities. Right now, county commissioners are the only ones in there. We're not opposed to having the municipalities have some sort of authority in this space and have worked to try and do that. I think there have to be things like public notice and hearing. That, for those of us that live in Laramie County, became a flashpoint in relationship to the Cheyenne Frontier Days proposal. And so that needs to be a consideration. Something that has been a problem through these court cases, as well as at the commissioner level, is the 100-mile rule. What do we do there? In particular, if one county is making decisions that are going to have an impact on the business and operations in another county. So what happens in Gillette and Campbell County can have an impact on Johnson County. We have others, Laramie County and Goshen and Albany County. Those are legitimate concerns. So we've looked at, should we restrict that to the county border? I think the common consensus amongst our membership over time has gone, this is an unnecessary rule, let's get rid of it. So we think that needs to be a part of the conversation. And I mentioned problem gaming this morning. All of those are things that we're very much interested in. That's what resulted in me taking draft legislation to the Joint Appropriations Committee last June 21st in particular, if you want to go see what I ultimately submitted to that committee, which became the basis for what we worked into House Bill 85. Do I like where House Bill 85 got to? No. There were a whole lot of things that I wanted in that. It was part of a compromise and working through dozens and dozens of iterations through their own select working group that they had set up through the Appropriations Committee. But this is an important issue for us, and we appreciate your consideration as we try and do better for the citizens of our state and do good by county government, municipal government, and the operators in the state of Wyoming.
Thank you for that testimony. Jeremiah, I would ask, though, at this point, that the things that you would have liked to have in that bill in 85 that didn't get in there, could you provide your comments about what they were at that point in time before it became formally House Bill 85, so we can see the history of just where the County Commission Association was standing on that topic?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I haven't put that together sitting here right this second, but I could certainly put together those thoughts and go back and look at the various iterations of what we felt we lost in that particular effort.
Yeah, I think that would be good, and it could be distributed to all the members of the task force, so we know where you're coming from and your concerns. Members of the task force, questions? The Wyoming County Commissioner Association? Oh, Ms. Co-Chairman? I should just look that way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming today, Mr. Ryman. My question is around zoning. Can you walk me through how many of your counties have used zoning to help regulate some of the gaming problems? That's the first question.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman, Madam Co-Chairwoman. I appreciate you giving me a heads up on that question. I did pose that to, I think, 11 of the counties last week that have HHR operations. The answer is none of them have specific zoning for historic horse racing. It is important to note that there are a number of counties where zoning is not part of the lexicon. Senator Crago and his area of Johnson County does not have zoning, and I doubt we'll have zoning anytime in the near future, and I suspect most of those others will not. I do think it's also important to point out that when it comes to zoning, counties have no authority inside of the municipality. That's particular parts of the statute. So most of these operations exist within municipal borders, so we wouldn't have that authority. And to the extent that the question comes forward from why aren't you using that versus some of the regulatory controls that you might have in this, just understand that they're not one and the same necessarily. There are things that you can do with zoning that you wouldn't be able to do in terms of the authorities that we're asking for, revoking permits, et cetera. You're going to have to give us that authority.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jeremiah. And Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some concerns about zoning, and I've talked to our sheriff, Laramie County Sheriff, and our chief of police. And anytime they're looking for somebody with a warrant, they send the officers through these off-track betting facilities. And the majority of the time, they'll find people there because they seem to be interested in the gaming and that sort of a lifestyle. Also, I have a friend that he likes to handicap horses pen and paper style. Well, he'll go to the off-track betting places, he'll get out of his car and he'll see syringes all the way to the door. Another thing, we have a off-track betting facility that is across the street from a school. Of course, the school is vacant right now, but I'm sure it could be used for another facility. So I'm saying, I think the county commissioners are losing, unless you zone to put these facilities in a proper place, we're at risk. Our children are at risk. So I would like to reconsider the zoning proposition of the county commissioners. Thank you.
Well, to add something to that before you answer, Jeremiah, just to be clear about it, a city is a body corporate located within a county, right? So they can't broach into that area. It's the city's area of responsibility. The county is county zoning potentially, but they have no influence on the city ordinances that would be what I think was really talking about, something in a city that has a higher population density than a county. So the ability to control ordinances from the county to a city, there isn't any. We can't tell the county what to do as a county, Board of County Commissioners when it comes to their zoning requirements. And I think, well, so much as, I guess I'll let Jeremiah answer to get a response, Representative Johnson, or maybe you want your response.
You know, I would just say it's not just county commissioners. I think the city should do the same thing. The cities have the ability to zone. And I think they in Cheyenne, I don't want to pick them out personally, but I live there and I think they've missed the boat on that one. And whatever your comment is, let me know. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I agree with that. The issue is going to be is that we don't allow the cities to have any part of this. The counties agree and it comes into the area, and then they decide they want to come into the cities, and the city's basically a victim of the Board of County Commissioners' decision, which makes, unhappy people between elected bodies. And I think that's part of this conversation we're going to have to deal with is how are we going to do that? How are we going to give them the authority to deny through, say, in this case, zoning? Because right now the cities are, they don't really have that ability, in my opinion. But
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a few things. First, I want to push back on the notion that the cities are a victim here. I think right now, the relationship is good, and the counties are trying to work and consider what the municipalities want. That said, they do deserve a space in this. I said that from the very beginning when it came up in appropriations. That said, and to your question, Representative Johnson, zoning is a tool, and certainly a tool that can be used to say, where the counties have authority, again, in the unincorporated area, to say these are most appropriate places for it, and these are not. Now, again, I don't think that there are counties that aren't, those counties that aren't in the zoning space, I don't think we're going to convince them to get in on this issue. That said, I think the things that you're bringing up make the point that those aren't zoning issues that you brought up. Those are mental health, substance abuse, things that, quite frankly, I think if you told us, the sheriff, or anybody told us, or the operators back here, we'd all work to clean that up. So I think we just need to know, and I think that our partners would help us address that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just want to push back a little bit. I don't want known criminals around our schools. That's specifically what I'm saying, is that this kind of enterprise is a magnet to these kind of people. And if they're within walking distance of school, that's what I'm worried about. And the zoning, the cities have missed a big point of making our schools safer. We zone for bars, we zone for pornography shops. Why don't we zone for these?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we're not in disagreement on that issue.
Okay, thank you.
Ashley, would you like to comment about that? Because you're part of the municipalities. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are to maybe help.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ashley Harpstreet. I'm the Executive Director for Wyoming Association of Municipalities. Representative Johnson, we could not agree with you more, but unfortunately, I will play the victim here, as we were told where they're going, because with our zoning, specifically in Cheyenne, we have zoned them into an area. There is a Board of Adjustments that is separate from the City Council, that they go for a variance, and they just look at the business side. They're not looking at the social welfare. And so that's not at all connected. And some of these, the horse is out of the gate before we've figured out this major explosion that's happened in the last couple of years of the increase in commerce. So other cities will zone in, will zone you in, others want you zoned out, stay away from these areas. I can tell you the specific location you're looking at, that was a concern with it being next to a school. And at that point, my council was held hostage. I do have Dr. Mark Rennie, who's the Cheyenne council member, who is kind of an expert on this whole situation, that is available to speak directly to that.
Well, thank you for that comment. Just want to say something that the municipalities and the counties are trying to address this problem. And it's a big problem. And we've had problems trying to get something across the finish line. And I think we're all working towards the same purpose here. We all have the same intent. And I just want to say that I think everyone's coming to the table knowing it's a problem, and we're trying to come up with a solution for everybody on the task force. It's not like people are deaf to this. And I appreciate your being here and being part of a solution and not part of a problem. So continue. Oh, Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at this a different way. You're right. What he said necessarily isn't a zoning issue. but couldn't the counties and cities use zoning as a tool to basically deny a permit? They still have a permit, but they could zone the area they want to put it in differently, and then you can't build a horse track there. Am I tracking that okay?
Who would like to take that? Ashley?
Mr. Chairman, members of, Senator McEwen, not the case in every municipality. So I would really defer to Dr. Rennie to maybe give some examples of why that wouldn't be the case.
Follow up.
And I wasn't referring to any city or county. It just seems to me that that could be a tool if executed properly. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, absolutely agree. It's a tool. It's one of the tools. I don't think it's the only tool that we're asking for. We know that there are other parts of this equation that aren't addressed through zoning, but it is absolutely one of the tools.
Yeah, is that good? Okay. Senator Crago?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just maybe a question for either one of you, but zoning, and just in my limited experience with zoning, I mean, we can't zone in reverse. So you can't affect what's already in place after it's already there. All zoning has grandfather clauses built into it. That's Wyoming law. That's law everywhere, actually. And so I guess, would you agree that that's a limiting factor in how we can use zoning going forward?
Mr. Chairman, the short answer is yes.
Wouldn't you agree?
Agree.
Yeah, it is a mixed bag. We've got all different situations with different counties, different cities, and we're trying to get this under one umbrella for control, right? I think that's the goal, local control. We got online.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just had a couple of brief comments from
Sure,
all
certainly.
99.
Yeah.
We appreciate this opportunity to be in this discussion with the Gaming Commission, our county commissioners, and the permittees. We want to be business-friendly partners as this industry is becoming a big part of our local communities. As those numbers you heard earlier from the Gaming Commission, 38 of those active permittees of the 41 are within municipal borders. So 38 of 41 are within our preview. Mr. Chairman and committee, I cannot stress how important it is for that local authority of the governing body to be at the table as this industry moves on to our main streets. There are some communities that are working in collaboration, but, and I think it's a lot in part with the work that we've been doing and that Jeremiah has been doing for the last couple of years. But at the end of the day, we're kind of left behind unless we're trying to catch up with them. Any legislation that will allow the local governing body to have a seat at the table and allows for a new notification process that will look for local input will be critical, as it provides an opportunity for the citizens to define what their landscape is going to look like. Cities and towns across Wyoming have different cultural attitudes towards gambling. Local control allows each community to decide whether those gaming activities align with its values and priorities. Per the previous comment at the University of Wyoming, and City of Laramie has very unique dynamics with our university there. Per Mr. Ryman's comments, any legislation that aims to clarify and balance authority between cities and counties, reducing the risk of legal disputes and fostering cooperation will be beneficial for all those involved. Additionally, taking action now is all about protecting the future. Currently, all activities are 100% served by municipal law enforcement, fire, street maintenance, and other public services. I'm in the midst of collecting call logs from the local PD to understand the stress on the services. I'm also working in conjunction with WASCOP. While it is under control at this time, depending on the growth, this could change the scope of the service and strain on municipal services provided. Zoning alone cannot control social and welfare issues we deal with in this industry. For example, we need legislation to allow local governments the ability to impose specific conditions on permits, such as hours of operation or location restrictions based on their unique needs and concerns. So thank you so much for the time just to express our concerns. And I, again, brought Dr. Rennie from Cheyenne that has had some very intimate interacting with this whole issue.
Thank you, Ashley. And Dr. Remy represents who?
City of Cheyenne Council.
Okay, thank you. Karen, could you bring Dr. Remy forward? You have?
Okay,
Hi, Dr. Remy.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. and Good afternoon to the members of the committee. I am Dr. Mark Rennie. I'm president of the Cheyenne City Council. I guess since the question came up, I also wanted to address city control through zoning. I know it was erroneously stated at the last legislative session that cities get to control HHR sites through building, it was stated, building permits and zoning. As you all know, with building permits, that process just makes sure that setbacks are observed properly and the building is constructed safely. That has nothing to do with whether a permit is approved or whether a location is approved. As far as the zoning argument is concerned, Laramie County has 9 historic horse racing sites. 7 of them are within the city of Cheyenne's boundaries. Of those 7, only 1 of them was zoned properly. And some years ago, and I actually think it was set by state statute, it was determined that you could not appeal a law to the body that approved or wrote the law. So in other words, you could not appeal a variance to the zoning ordinance to the city council. So Cheyenne, as well as I know Cody and Powell has, I think Laramie has a similar arrangement. Cheyenne created a board of adjustments. And so if you have a request for a zoning variance, you go through our board of adjustments. And so all 6 of those, the area sites that were improperly zoned went through our board of adjustments and were approved by the board of adjustments. Now, you can say that Cheyenne had some control in that area, but you have to realize that board is an appointed board. They are not elected. They are not beholden to the public as council members are. So, as a matter of fact, I think unless you have to go to the board of adjustments for something, you don't even know they exist. So we maybe indirectly have control through zoning, but honestly, we do not. And then I also want to add that the general public really doesn't understand the process. They assume that when there's a historic horse racing establishment approved, that it's gone through the municipal governing body, and consequently, the members of the city council or town council are the ones that are called when residents have questions or concerns. But due to the fact that the applications and approvals went through the county commission, we don't always have the answers and can't address their concerns. And I guess finally, it's kind of the old buck stops here thing. If we're the ones that are perhaps catching the blame or the criticism, we would like to be the ones that actually made the vote or made the decision. And I want to, and then most importantly, as Director Harpstreet referred to, it's when an establishment is located within the municipal boundaries, it's that city or town that provides all the services for that gaming establishment. All this, such as water, sewer, sanitation, police and fire, as well as the street maintenance and snow removal. So it is the city or town whose resources are impacted and are used. And as a result, we think, again, we should have some input into that decision. And finally, and I think it was Director Ryman that mentioned this, I want to say that of the venues or the operators that are in Cheyenne, we have a really good relationship with all of them. They have been really good corporate citizens. If we have an issue, we call them and correct it. They work very closely with our police department, and we have no complaints there. But as Director Ryman said, we also have no protections in case a bad actor comes to town. And as you're seeing, more and more of these are where the major owners are outside of Wyoming. They may be only looking at profits and may not necessarily care about the impact of the community. And if we do have a bad actor, somebody that is not a good influence on our community, we have no ability to regulate them or do anything to encourage them to be a better corporate citizen. So For all these reasons, I'm pleased that you're looking at this issue of lack of local control when it comes to historic horse racing applications and renewals. And I want to thank you for your consideration and would encourage you to support some kind of legislation to give municipalities some input into the process. So thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions as far as local government is concerned if I can.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Remy. Is there any questions from the task force? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Dr.
Thank
Remy.
you.
I guess, anything more you would like to say between the Wyoming County Association and the municipalities? No? Okay. Well, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, a question. I should have looked to my left. Sorry, Ms. Co-Chair. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question has to do with the 100-mile law. Everybody refers to it as the rule, but I read it in law. So with the 100-mile law, could you explain how your municipalities and county commissioners are feeling about that? Is there any talk about it? Can you just kind of walk me through where each of your representation lands for that particular law?
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairwoman Lean, and just for reference, it's in 1125-102A Romanet 7C, so it's immediately after the county commissioner portion is where you have this 100-mile statute, 100-mile rule. It's, as I said, an issue that's sort of evolved for county commissioners. For a lot of reasons, it hasn't made sense. I mean, it makes sense of why it was put in place, going back to looking at the models in, say, Tennessee and elsewhere. Certainly respect that, and there are others here that could explain it far better than I ever could. But I think county commissioners have run into the issues of, okay, I'm making a decision that is going to potentially have an impact on the business operations in another county and their county revenue streams. And so at one point in time, we were an advocate of taking that 100-mile rule and bringing it back to the county border so that at the very least, whatever happened would only be within that particular county. I think we've evolved from there as we've gone in on time as we put more tracks in place, and we certainly want that to happen. I mean, that's what the intent is of this industry, is to see more Wyoming bred horses and successful operations here. Could we, as race seasons extend, be putting out of business certain operations in the county and employees that depend on those jobs? And so ultimately, my members have come to the conclusion, let's just get rid of the dang thing. It hasn't worked. It hasn't helped us when we've gone to court. Let's just swipe it off the books. And I think most of the operators agree with that. I understand there's one that doesn't, and that's fine. We can argue over where that needs to be, but it is something our members ultimately would like to see at least adjusted.
Yeah, thanks for that comment, Jeremiah. On that note, though, I know the reason why there was 100 miles is because of the issue between Sweetwater and UNA for the tracks going out of business back when I was a county commissioner. That's the reason why it fit back in the day. But it was a fledgling operation. I mean, it was barely able to keep a purse going. And now with HHR, we don't have that issue anymore. So it's certainly a new day. And the larger question is, do we want to strike it altogether, or do we want to retain the authority of the Board of County Commissioners, in this case, if it's in the county, to authorize or not to authorize said track and give them cover with statutory changes that allows them to do that? And we'll hold up in court, And if there's no sense in, dying on that hill with a 100-mile rule, then I wonder too if it's time for it to go. But that's certainly a part of this topic. I mean, it's a couple levels of what we could do. So currently, the County Commissioner Association, to be very clear, decides to strike the 100 miles, and they don't want it anymore.
Mr. Chairman, that's currently where our position is, yes.
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairwoman Lean, I would say that our sentiments pretty much echo where the commissioners are as well. And if there was any flexibility, it would be going back to home rule and giving the locals the ability to, decide if they're going to opt in or opt out to that. At least getting to a county border, I think, would be helpful. The 100 Mile is problematic with some of the new tracks that would, impact other areas. And we are concerned about business retention and expansion. You look at the city of Cheyenne, and we've got some major developments where there are facilities that I've been doing my homework and going and checking out and seeing what it's like. And they've invested millions upon millions of dollars in, and it's driving tourism from our friends down south and honestly kept city of Cheyenne afloat through some of these cuts that we went through. So again, we want to be good partners, but it's a new day. And it would be something we would highly encourage you to dig deep and think about.
Representative Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got to say that all the facilities, off-track betting facilities in the city of Cheyenne are extremely helpful to the police and sheriff department. They do extra policing and they do their job. My concern is, we started this pari-mutuel gambling racing to promote horse racing. Doesn't the 100 Mile rule add to the pots of those facilities within the 100 Mile that are racing it that day? I mean, isn't that the intent of the law, is to raise the purses so that we get better horses racing on our tracks?
Jeremiah.
Mr. Chairman, again, they're going to be better people to explain sort of the history and the intent around that. I will say, the Campbell County decisions, the commissioners came at it from that perspective of, let's protect horse racing first. We want to, offer simulcasting to the operator that is going to have a track here. And I think that was part of what Sweetwater County was doing, and wanted to push the others out that weren't investing in horse racing in their particular community. What I'm trying to express is that in every case, the counties are losing in these cases, and the 100 Mile rule is a part of that.
Be good, Representative Johnson? Okay. Any further questions? I don't see any. I look forward to working with you, with the municipalities, the Wyoming County Commissioner Association. I think you're going to be an integral part of anything that we move forward for local control, and we're going to need your input and have a debate about what we can do to go forward with this. So thank you very much for coming. Then Representative Johnson, if we get the Gaming Commission up here to ask that question you asked, maybe at the end, you could ask that question then. You're welcome. Next, we have public comment, sorry. Anyone would like, yes. Madam Ellis, Counselor, would you wish to tell us, I guess, what you need us to know?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't sure what information you would be provided today. I think we've really glossed over a whole bunch of very pertinent facts, which would illustrate where we are today. So I brought a lot. I think staff might need some time to hand it out. I don't want to tell you how to run your committee, but with your indulgence, maybe it would make sense for us to have like a little bathroom break to give staff a chance to hand out these materials, and I can walk you through what they contain. The other thing I just want to point out is I know you've been trying to limit public comment to 5 minutes, and I just think that's insufficient for the amount of information we're going to try to provide you. A lot of it's background information I thought you might have already gotten today, and that doesn't even cover like our views on it, but just the court case that Mr. Ryman mentioned not being able to get his hands on. I have a copy of it for all of you.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor. I think, number one, we could always probably get it disseminated earlier, right? So we could get it out in email format through the LSO. That'd probably been the best way, but here we are today. My issue about 5 minutes is, I said it before, and I'll say it again, is that I don't want to run out of time for the normal topics. And at the end, as long as we have extra time, representative or a counselor, we can talk about whatever. That's fine. I mean, I realize this is a long and exhaustive process with a lot of data. So I'll indulge you. We'll take a recess for 5 minutes. You can hand this stuff out, but we still have to be cognizant of time. That's all. That's what I care about. I'm not trying to cut off your testimony. It's all valuable. Just to be fair, that's the reasoning behind it.
Understood, Mr. Chairman. You know, I think we've got 55 minutes. If we take a 5-minute bathroom break, that gives us 50 minutes. It might be helpful to see who else in the audience would like some time to testify.
As long as Counselor, you don't take up all the time, I suppose we'll have some. I understand. That's why I want to be cognizant of time. Give everybody a chance to get their opportunity and not have monopolize all the time. And I realize it's important, but we have to be cognizant of if people came here today, and I don't know if they're going to testify or not, Counselor, I'll find out, and then we'll see where we're at.
Mr. Chairman, that's my exact goal too. I'd be curious to know, and if no one wants to testify, that might gauge how
I
much
can
we
ask the
can.
question. Anybody in the audience wish to testify on this topic in number one in public comment? Okay, so we have numerous people back there. So I'll still stick by what I said. We're going to go through the format, and if we have time, more than welcome, we'll come back up and we'll continue on. So just be aware of that, just to be fair to everybody, so we give everyone a good chance to have their points of view expressed. So let's take a recess for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Will Edwards. I am the developer of the Thunder Plains Racetrack in Cheyenne, Wyoming, outside Laramie County. I'm born and raised in Wyoming. I don't know how else to introduce myself. I've instructed my counsel to keep our comments brief in the interest of time this afternoon. I just want to state for the record that we have invested millions of dollars into this industry in Wyoming for the benefit of the state. And it is our sincere intent to promote horse racing in the state of Wyoming. And as such, we would appreciate 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I got to turn my own microphone on. Councilor Ellis, would you like to continue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I've handed out 2 just PowerPoints to try and move through these issues somewhat quickly. But, I was in the same position as Mr. Ryman. What happened in Campbell County with the 100-mile rule when 307 horse racing first entered the scene. And when I read the Supreme Court's opinion, it was really light on the facts, and I didn't feel like I had the full picture of what happened. And so I went and had my legal assistant help me obtain copies of the filings that were presented in that case. And so what I've given you are 2 copies. One is the May 7th filing, and this is filed on behalf of Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing against Campbell County. This does a pretty good job of laying out the facts as they were. I wanted to provide it all to you in full disclosure just so they can become part of the meeting materials. You'll also see some really interesting handouts that accompany the brief. And so in essence, how I understand the 307 situation to be is, you heard some mention of the 2014 OTB case. So if you go to page 1 of the PowerPoint that I gave you that's titled, What Led to Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing versus Campbell County, you'll see that at the time, you only had 2 operators, Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing, and they had a handful of or HHR facilities across Wyoming. Well, so then here comes 307 Horse Racing. I took a screenshot of what's available on their website. They talked about the fact that when they initially started running their races in Gillette, their plan was to do so without any OTBs. And so they're the newcomer, the first one to be bringing live horse racing to Wyoming in a while. And so then if you look at the next page, there's a picture of 2020, what the OTB locations look like. And those red, blue, and green lines all signify approximately about what 100 miles looks like. So you've heard about the 100-mile law. I'll call it the 100-mile rule just out of convenience. But what it says is any OTB that's located within that shaded area is supposed to contribute some money to the purses of the track. Now, it doesn't say that in statute. What it says is that you have to have the permission from the track owner, the track operator, if you're an OTB existing in that gray area. And so how it works in other states, Mr. Chairman, is that those OTBs will contribute either a portion of their gaming revenue or a flat fee or whatever they negotiate to the live horse race operator, and that's used to fund their purses. Over the weekend, I sent you an audio clip of Senator Schiffer when he presented this bill in 2013. He said the word purses at least 6 times. How do you grow this race industry? Purses, purses, purses. We got to get good horses. That's what attracts the crowds. So when 307 came into the scene, we understand that there was some disagreement among the operators about how the enforcement of the 100-mile rule would look. And so this led the 2 existing operators, the red and the blue there on your picture, Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing, I believe worked with Representative Sandy Newsom in 2021 on a bill which would have repealed the 100-mile rule. And so I've went back, listened to all of these hearings, and so you'll see some excerpts from that hearing. I would encourage you to watch the whole thing. In full disclosure, I want you to watch all of this so you can learn and educate yourself about what was said. At the time, 307, and you'll see a picture of Mr. Greer, talked about the importance of the 100-mile rule, how it wasn't being enforced amongst the other operators. What they do is a reciprocal waiver. You race in my sandbox without exchanging purse money, and we'll afford that back to you. So Mr. Greer says, we believe that this has been missing, and this is what's prevented live horse racing from growing, and so some important excerpts from his testimony. This was all taken from House Appropriations on March 10th, 2021. At the time, they had one of their lobbyists speaking against the bill, looking for clarification. So what I think what was happening, Mr. Chairman, and I don't want to speak for the other operators, but this would be so helpful for me to hear their version of the story too, was there was a disagreement over the enforcement of the 100-mile rule. Did it have to go all year round for every day that Campbell County's facility was leased? Or was it more narrow than that, maybe to the day of the race? And so there was an Attorney General opinion, you'll find it in all those legal documents I provided, where the Attorney General provided a very limited window that said only during race days and race times are, the time that you have to be concerned about. So moving on, in addition to speaking against repealing the 100-mile rule, were the county commissioners of Campbell County at the time. In here, they talk about how they asked the Wyoming Gaming Commission to come to Campbell County to get on a Zoom meeting, and I'm reading from the excerpt, to educate us on what we have to do. And he said, we haven't heard back from them. So House Bill 125 dies, goes away, and Campbell County, to my understanding, was very concerned that you had 2 operators with OTBs in Campbell County who didn't have an agreement with 307 Horse Racing, and so they were concerned that they were out of compliance. So we've heard this talk of bad actors, and I keep hearing, like, what does that mean? And so I'm wondering if that's what it means. Anytime you're out of compliance with the state statute, does that mean you're a bad actor? Keep a pin in that. That's an important concept. But that's what they were worried about. So on April 20th, right after the session ended, they were looking at the race schedule. When is 307 going to have its first horse race? So they called an emergency meeting. They gave the other 2 operators very little time, and you'll read about that in the briefs if you take the time to read them. And they essentially passed a resolution that would have revoked a prior resolution that allowed them to have their OTBs in Campbell County. In visiting with Campbell County Commissioners, and I just want you to know this, I'm a curious person, and so I want to know why, what was going on. So I did call a couple of the county commissioners, and I spoke to one of them. And my understanding was they were hoping that their permit revocation would motivate the other 2 operating OTBs in Campbell County to start that negotiation process over enforcement of the 100-mile rule. That didn't happen. They filed this lawsuit instead. And so, I would encourage you all, give a call to those county commissioners that were in those seats at that time and get their recollection of what was happening. So that's what actually led to Wyoming Downs versus Wyoming Horse Racing, which you received a copy of, and it's an important position. But I want to highlight a few things that are said in these briefs, and they're long. They talk, Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing, they talk about the significant financial investment that they've made in that county, in Campbell County, millions of dollars. They talk about arbitrary and capricious government decision-making. They express concern that the county commissioners are only going to give 307 a monopoly in their county. They talk about the need for a strong statewide gaming commission to regulate this whole fabric. I want to say, I think it's like a sweater. You have to be careful. If you pull one string here, you might unravel it over here. So they make all of these arguments, and they talk about fairness and due process and all these things that we talk about in the law. And so I think these briefs are really helpful, and a lot of them, are things that we would echo right now, our concerns with House Bill 85. So to keep this short on Campbell County, you'll see the decision, as Commissioner Jeremiah Ryman pointed out, that the Campbell County lacks implied or express authority to revoke these permits. So I leave you in this presentation with a 2024 version of OTB locations. Again, these are all, just to give you a sense, I know they're big dots that you can see on it, but that's kind of the lay of the land. And as Chairwoman Lean mentioned, I don't know that it's quite right to think of this as 3 operators. As she pointed out, Wyoming Downs and 307 Horse Racing announced a joint venture. What that means, I don't know. But my understanding is they might have one consolidated owner of 2 different gaming companies that look different, have different names, different branding. 307 Horse Racing, those are the Derby clubs, if you will. But I think our biggest concern is that somehow, if we're iced out of this market, that there will only be 2 operators, and instead of a monopoly, it'll be a duopoly. Along those lines, the last thing I'll point out is it is difficult to get your hands in, but in the later filed court document, the lawyers for Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing provided a copy of that 2014 opinion that you heard so much about, or you heard a little about, I guess, just a bit ago. And this was written, never made it to the Wyoming Supreme Court, but it was signed by District Court Judge Couts, who, as you know, later became a Supreme Court justice. He talks about all the fundamentals too. Due process, can't do monopoly making. If a local government wants to be involved in these things and they have local ordinances, they have to be applied fairly to all operators. And so this really is an important opinion, and I think that's why we're very concerned about some of House Bill 85, if you'll indulge us in a moment, about having our access to the courts, which the final version of House Bill 85 would have denied us access to the courts, or sought to deny us access. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about that history.
Task Force, any questions to ask Counselor? Oh, Co-Chairman Lynn, fine. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say, as I have a chance to review these materials, please look in your email. I'll be in touch with you about some questions.
Thank you.
Well, seeing none.
Mr. Chairman, with that just kind of lays some foundational. And so when I hear, we're just going to brush away the 100-mile rule, there's a whole history that goes along with that too. And it has to go with protection of the track. If you look at other states, they all have similar mileage-based rules. I think 100 miles makes sense for Wyoming because our population is pretty spread out. We have, large geographic base, but low population. And so I would just encourage you to take some time to visit with other states to learn how that works. And a lot of this started because of some activity that was occurring at the national level in the 1970s. There was a New York organization that wanted to simulcast some races at the Kentucky Derby. They reached out to the state of Kentucky. Kentucky didn't give their consent. And so that New York operation ended up, I think, profiting $15 million in some law review article I read. And what they quoted as illegal, taking bets and profiting off of another state's horse race. So Congress started looking at that issue and they said, okay, we're not going to allow that at all. And then they started to evolve their thinking. In 1978, they finally passed a bill that said, actually, we'll let you do that, but you have to get the state and the racetrack and the horsemen's groups permission to do it. That way, instead of borrowing it, that activity entirely, they could negotiate a price. If you're going to make money on our race, how does this benefit Kentucky, the Derby, and the horsemen's group? And so that's kind of the origin of this simulcasting rule. The act the Congress passed in 1978 also. But Mr. Chairman, briefly to go through this, and I'm going to look at my timer and try and be quick. You heard some testimony about the origins of House Bill 85. And so to walk you through that, the next packet with the blue paint job or whatever that is on the front, you'll see the hearing schedule. The first hearing that the JAC held was on May 7th and 8th in Laramie. At the time, you'll see I reference a letter from the existing operators, each of their attorneys from Wyoming Downs, Wyoming Horse Racing, and 307. On the next page, they have a very extensive description about the role of the counties. They talk about the interplay between counties and the Gaming Commission and the importance of having a strong central regulatory body that could take all of these concerns into account. They talk about their concern if you start letting counties enforce state permits, that all of a sudden you're going to start pitting counties against one another, and that's just not going to make it, that just doesn't make sense for this. And so as much as I appreciate wanting to reverse the hands of time, allow local control to, dominate this entire scheme, it's just really not set up that way. So you'll see, though, is about a year ago, that was the position of these groups. Moving on, the next meeting they held was in June, and I believe they took a tour. I highlighted a piece of that agenda where they went to Gillette and looked at the Camplex. And so some of the early bills that they looked at, going on to the next page, is Working Draft 4 of 25 LSO 51. This is a pretty short bill, 5 pages, and it says essentially that if the gaming facility is going to be located in the municipality is the one that you have to get the approval from, which makes sense. The rest are more or less conforming amendments. It was at this hearing, and you heard Mr. Ryman say this, where he presented his bill, and you'll see it's a 7-page bill. And what they wanted is notice hearing. They want to be able to impose reasonable conditions such as days and hours of operation. I believe they do that already, but sounds great. But then they also talk about, in this bill, the ability to revoke a simulcast permit if it's not operational within 1 year. I think that's a liquor license concept. And they want the ability to revoke for good cause. I want to pause because this ties back to the conversation about Campbell County and what happened there. When the commissioner said they reached out to the Gaming Commission and no one returned their call and they didn't get guidance. Because the Gaming Commission, I think, didn't act, and maybe it was premature for them to act because a race hadn't been run yet, instead of relying on the state regulatory body to take enforcement action, the counties felt like, well, if they're not going to do it, then maybe we do it. And I'm paraphrasing, I'm putting words in their mouth. So if that's not fair, I apologize. But I think we need to understand kind of what happened there. What is the role of the Gaming Commission? And to me, it makes sense that if you have a state agency that issues the overall permit and the county approval is a condition of that permit, if there's a violation at the county or city level, that you go talk to the Gaming Commission and say, hey, there's a break, they're not up to land use codes, they're doing this, they're doing that. Then it's their job, and this is how it works in every gaming jurisdiction I'm aware of. Then the Gaming Commission says, okay, we're going to go investigate what's going on. And then if they think there's a reason, some kind of violation, they'll usually have a hearing. and they'll either issue citations, orders to fix the problem, and if there are no solutions in sight to fix the problem, they issue closure orders. And I have seen that a lot. And so that's the process that should be followed when the county say we have no ability. That's a pretty important one. And I don't want to be too critical of anyone, because all of this information and all of these thoughts are easy to kind of glean when you look at it in hindsight. In the moment, we all live in government, we're all listening to testimony, we all want to be responsive to our constituents. But I think that's why it's so important for us to understand what happened in Campbell County and maybe what should have happened, so that if we have these problems again, we know a better direction forward. So to move along, here's the County Commissioner's bill. By September, now you're going to be looking at Working Draft 8. This version of the bill started introducing some additional concepts. Here you heard LSO talk about how HHR machines are really defined as being a simulcast operation. Here, and I don't understand this, I haven't quite gleaned it out, but they started trying to figure out a way to maybe define historic horse racing machines separately. So that was in that version of the bill draft. Here comes Wyoming Thunder Plains. We get approval from the Wyoming Gaming Commission for our horse racing operation. And then at the next meeting, you see Working Draft 10, and here's where we start seeing the repeal of the 100-mile rule in its entirety. And so I appreciate that people think it's antiquated. I don't at all. I think it's a very effective tool that ties the HHR activity to the growth of Wyoming's horse racing industry. So then we start seeing some other concerns. We heard about, well, we have these new rules that the counties and cities now can have to revoke permits, to maybe deny permits. What do we do with the existing permit holders? So here's Working Draft 10, how they decided to address that. But later on in the session, we also received some information, and this is where it gets a little tricky. The original version of that bill had the effective date being July 1st, 2025. During the committee amendment process, we saw a request to have that take immediate effect. So what that means for cowboy racing, if had that passed and had House Bill 85 become laws, we would have had to start all over again with the permitting process. They've been approved for their live permit application, but they're still mid-process on their simulcasting permit. And so our concern was, and still is, if you make us start all over again, and this time instead of going to the Laramie County Commission and having to go to the city of Cheyenne, are our competitors going to wage a ground war to get a public upswell of opposition to our proposed facilities? And so, for those of you who live in Cheyenne, you read about some of that in the paper. One of the facilities that they proposed was on the east side of Cheyenne, about 0.7 mile from an elementary school. If you did it as the crow flies, it's about 0.5 miles or half a mile. And we're sensitive to that, and for all the reasons that were articulated earlier. But I think what we're concerned about is there are two existing gaming facilities along Pershing Avenue, both 0.2 and 0.3 miles. So if you're going to deny cowboy racing, out of concerns that it's located too close to an elementary school, then what about these other two, right? And so I think what we're asking for is zoning, truly, so that we start seeing a clear path forward where those, existing ones that were grandfathered in, but going forward, here's the lay of the land, all of you operators have to play by. And we think that that's the most fair approach. So moving on to the December committee meeting, you'll see Working Draft 12. Here are a few more concerns. In visiting, and this is just being part of prior legislative sessions, we used to see in our statutes a lot of areas where you'd have to get two approvals if you were a business, one from the county and one from the city if you're within a certain buffer. I think businesses responded really negatively to that for a lot of reasons in other contexts, because it's confusing, like who does have that veto authority. But you start seeing, we did away with that in a lot of areas of the law, but here's that concept reemerging. And then the most concerning part for us then, if you look at one of these versions, Working Draft 10, you'll see that if we were denied our simulcasting permit by either the county or the city, we'd have a right of appeal. But by the December version, we would be denied that right of appeal. So you'll see that from the December 10th version. And so that's alarming. We've heard people try and liken these to liquor licenses, which you don't have a vested property right in. Because there are two permitting tracks that go along with this, Mr. Edwards and his family have spent millions of dollars in reliance on the Gaming Commission for their live event permit. You've heard the testimony. These racetracks are not economically viable on their own. We passed laws authorizing gaming facilities to help be a source of revenue to pay for those tracks and pay for those operations. And so that's our concern, Mr. Chairman, is if we get approved for the live event, but then we don't get approved for our simulcasting operations, his track's going to be significantly less successful. So what we want is, if we're denied, the ability to say, well, is it fair? Are we being treated similarly as our other, OTB competitors? And usually courts have been an important backstop in that. In the 2014 case, in the 2020 Campbell County case, we don't want monopolies, we want fair, capitalism, free market. But when we start seeing that we're denied access to the courts, I think that's really started raising some significant alarm bells, Mr. Chairman, is these are not liquor licenses, you're involving vested property rights. And if you spend the time to read these court cases, they talk about things like equal protection under the Wyoming Constitution. So these are not things to take lightly. As I'm wrapping up, Mr. Chairman, I've only got a few more slides, but another concept we've heard is, well, these things are popping up, there's just too many of them. I just want to reiterate the point that my client doesn't have one gaming facility open at all. So to the extent that we're concerned about them popping up, there are two operators right now who have popped a lot of them up, okay? So back at the December hearing, one of the operators asked that if they wanted to transfer a location, that they be grandfathered in and be treated as a renewal applicant, not as a new applicant. Well, if you go back and look at the charts that were provided by the Wyoming Gaming Commission, you'll see the number of, and you've got to spend some time looking at those charts. There are some facilities that have very few machines, like 80 machines. So what that would mean is you could take a facility that has 80 or so machines and then want to transfer it to a different facility that maybe houses 600 machines or 1,000 machines. And the county commission and municipalities would have no ability to really say no to that unless they have good cause. And if they say no, then the operator can sue. But if my client wanted to do that out of the get-go, they'd be denied because they're a new applicant. And so that's our concern, Mr. Chairman, is, I keep hearing these conflicting things, like there's too much gaming, there's too much. Okay, we're listening to that. But we, when we applied through the Laramie County Commissioners, the questions we got were, when's this going to end? We're worried a crazy loophole is being exploited. What's your plan? When's this, there's an oversaturation. I mean, that's the feedback we got for 300 games, 289. Fast forward a couple of months later, and one of our competitors applied to transfer one of their locations that currently has 86 machines on the floor. I think they've been approved for maybe 120 or something. They were approved for 600 games, 500 additional games once they transfer that location. So that's the mixed message we're getting is, okay, so there's too much gaming, but it's only too much gaming from our side, or is it, we're just trying to sort through some of those issues. And so, Mr. Chairman, I finally in this packet, I did provide a summary of House Bill 85. And, if this is unfair to the people in this room, I can appreciate that. This is just kind of from our viewpoint and our lens of what we see. So, our existing competitors have wanted the repeal of the 100-mile rule. They've testified a year ago that they wanted the Gaming Commission to exclusively regulate simulcasting, not counties or municipalities. They want their due process, and then they want to be able to transfer their facilities. Cities wanted notice. They want some approval authority to have a seat at the table. Counties want notice. They wanted to be able to have this revocation authority. And at the time, they wanted enforcement of the 100-mile rule, not repeal of it. So as House Bill 85 turned into what I view as more of a Christmas tree, there was a little bit of negotiation. Wyoming Downs, 307 Horse Racing, instead of wanting a strong gaming commission, they were willing to talk about maybe more local control. And then the counties, I think we're willing to just say this 100-mile rule is confusing and hard. Enough time's passed, we just don't want to deal with it anymore. But what we lost was everything. There was not one thing negotiated in House Bill 85 that helped their project. And, at the end of the day, they took on this project with the statutes as they are. And it really felt like they were trying to change the rules, or there was an effort to change the rules midway through their process to make their project unsuccessful. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Counselor. I'll let the committee go first. Anyone on the committee wishes to comment? Task force, excuse me. Co-chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you kind of walk me through your permitting process? I was able to sit in on the last commission meeting where I did hear about the challenges that are facing your client. And so I'm curious to know, where's the permitting process at with your track and with your machines?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, currently we are fully permitted. I would like to state for the record that the Gaming Commission has been incredibly supportive of our project. And in that endeavor, we are looking at, due to some construction difficulties that we had this year, an extension for race meet in 2026. Those discussions haven't been finalized yet. I feel really good where we're at with the Gaming Commission.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I just had a kind of a simpler question. I heard a lot about why we don't want to get rid of the 100-mile rule, but I can tell you, just as a person kind of getting inundated with all this at one time, data-wise, I haven't heard the real nuts and bolts reason why. Why is a 100-mile rule devastating to your business proposition if it goes away? Fiscally, what is going on there? Can you explain that in a very simple way? Not about, I know about Campbell County, right? I want to know from that perspective why it's important. Just simply explain that as a business proposition, why it fundamentally damaged your project. Could you help me out with that?
Well, for starters, I'd like to start off by saying that the 100-mile rule wasn't really the catalyst that brought the project online. We didn't build the track because of the 100-mile rule, and it is not our intent to close anybody else down. However, that being said, we do feel that local OTBs who take advantage of the commerce in those communities, support that local horse track, support local horse racing. Local OTBs should go to support local horse racing. And the key to that success is purse money. Over and over again, it's always purse money. And that goes to the horsemen, which goes to the breeders, which brings better horses, brings better races. It's all, as I believe you said previously, Mr. Chairman, at the time, a couple decades ago, the track was fledgling because it needed purse money. That's the position that our track is finding ourselves in. We need purse money to be successful in Laramie County. And the success of our track will then be successful for the rest of the state in horse racing. It's our intent to add to the success of horse racing in the state. And to do that, we need purse money. And we think local OTBs is the key to bringing better purse money.
Mr. Chairman, may I follow up?
Follow up.
Mr. Chairman, I think Will's right. I don't think it is devastating in that sense. I think what the problem is when these machines were brought online in 2013, that was the promise made to the legislature. If you bring these machines online, they're going to contribute to the purse money. And please read Senator Schiffer's statement. Purse money, purse money, purse money. He says it at least 6 times. If you read the statute, there's no language in there about purses. There's no definition. But that's the industry practice and how it works in other states. And so in other states, there's been a practice of decoupling. And what happens, and this is something I appreciate that I learned about this at a NICLG's conference, the National Conference of State Gaming Legislators. I went to one. And the fight is, we want to have these gaming operations. How do we do that in a conservative state, maybe like Wyoming? I know they like their horses, they like their agriculture guys. Let's go approach the horsemen's groups and say, we're going to do this. And so instead of just hearing from gaming companies saying, we want to bring these machines, there's a loop in with ag. And people in Wyoming are like, yeah, I like horse racing. I like that. And so then in other states, they'll say, well, we're kind of tired of doing the horse racing piece. It's expensive and we don't want to do that anymore. So they'll say, it's not working. These horse races it's just not quite generating the kind of outcomes that we wanted, the success of this industry. How about we just sever these two connections? And the horsemen's groups in other states I've seen being very vocal, saying, no, you came in on our backs. This was the whole purpose of it. And so from a broader perspective, Mr. Chairman, I think that's the concern is, what if we start just having some free-floating gaming facilities that aren't really tied to the tracks at all? And then all of a sudden, it's really the purse money is dependent on how much, Will wants to put forward with purse money for Cowboy Racing's track, instead of the entire community coming together to support that industry. And so that's the healthier ecosystem we're trying to develop, so that they have an interest and we all have an interest in watching this industry grow. And to support horse racing and not to support just more opening of machines.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor. I mean, I agree. I want to support horse racing. I don't think that's in question. I think the larger topic is, as this is developed, from my understanding, is that, that it came in with this tracks and the OTBs came in, which funneled money into the tracks for the purses, right? In a very large, rough way of talking about it. So if you want to come in and now you want to do that, then why don't you open up your own OTBs, right? And then pump your facility up and have it go and have that funnel money into your purses that way. I mean, I think we have a unique situation here, which obviously is probably going to end up in the courts. So, trying to deal with this, I just see it, I understand what you're saying. I think a lot of people can see the connection that we're talking about with the horse racing. And like I said, I'm in agreement with you. It is all about horse racing. It's about developing those purses. But to have an industry that went through an alliteration of development, right, where it came from really no purse money way back in the day because there was no OTBs, to them, those folks coming together and making an OTB and then developing that money and making the purses, frankly, what they are today. It's kind of a different thing to me. I mean, explain to me why it's the same when you weren't involved with developing the purse money in the first place, and now you want to get the purse money because we want live horse racing, and I agree we do. You know, why is that fair, right, today in the year 2025 to look at it that way? Why? Could you help me out with that, Counselor?
Mr. Chairman, the purpose of it, again, was to incentivize more horse tracks coming online. And I've heard this before, you know, oh, you've got these OTBs that open in Cheyenne, and now you might hurt the OTBs. The whole point of having the 100-mile rule was so that an investor could look at a place like Cheyenne and say, you know what, I'm going to spend this money on building a track, and that money's coming out of my pocket. And, you know, it'll eventually pay for itself. I'll open my own OTBs, which they've applied to do, and that'll start paying for the recouping of the cost of the track. But the piece of it that connects it to horse racing and that would add it as an incentive to encourage guys to open a racetrack would be the purse money won't be an additional thing I have to cover out of my pocket because these machines, that's their existence for doing that too. If you think of all the benefits we get out of oil and gas, you know, we talk about this all the time, right? It's property tax, severance tax, sales tax. We get so many benefits of it. That was supposed to be an additional benefit of authorizing the horse racing machines was we have this 100-mile rule. That's another incentive for a live track operator to come online, was that those OTBs would help cover the costs of the purse and help the purses grow. And so I appreciate that the Gaming Commission has put together some data for you to look at that shows how much the purses has grown. But again, this is all mandated, or there's no mandate to it. It's really what each operator wants to put in. But if you look at places like Kentucky, who we modeled our laws after, you will see, and I have a chart I can email you if you're interested, the growth of their purses. And that has made the significant difference for their state. And so this is an industry practice, Mr. Chairman, is what I'm going to say. And, you know, I want to address one other point you raised about the 100-mile rule. And impacting other communities. It doesn't impact, you know, Thunder Plains will not impact the revenues that Albany County will receive. Albany County will receive the funds they receive from their gaming facility that's opening there. That doesn't change. I think it just means less of that money goes to the bottom line of companies and more money gets dedicated toward the horse racing operation.
Thank you, Counselor. I think you give some consideration to the task force that this is a lot of information, right? And this is an ongoing situation that came over from the legislative session from last session, right? So this has been an ongoing thing. And I think you gave us a lot of things to look at, okay? And I think it's fair to let the task force look at these things, digest these things, and probably come back possibly with other questions. But there's a lot of ground to cover here. I respect you being a businessman. Well, I mean, you're doing, frankly, probably what I try to do. But that doesn't mean, I think it's necessarily the right thing to do in some cases. But I don't fault anyone for running a business and trying to make that business successful with a model. And I think that's what I'm hearing. The model's going to change, and it's not going to be conducive for the long-term fiscal benefit of your track. And I understand that. But there's other things to consider too. But I guess give us as a task force the time to look at this, right? We are going to work on, I think the intent would be is work on legislative draft, right? And it's going to take time to develop whatever we're fiddling with because it's not simple. It's not easy. I still wish to, I'm still listening to what you're saying, but we're here to deal with a lot of issues and past Senator Ellis knows that. It's not simple being a legislator. There's a lot of, push and pulls between different groups. But it's going to be given a fair consideration. And that's about all that's all I can really think of right now that we can do. And I say this amount of information, I've always found it difficult. There's just no way you can look at all this and really get your arms around it. You live it, you're council, and, you know, this is what you've been doing. It is not what we've been doing, right, as a group, with all due respect, Councilor Ellis. And so I don't know, if there's something else you'd like to add on, please do.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank the committee. Trust me on this. You know, I got in the legislature in 2017. I didn't start looking at this until 2021. And it has been an ongoing lesson for me. And I learn a lot, and I've experienced a lot, I've seen a lot. And as I said, it's always easy to look back in hindsight and said, well, why didn't, you know, the Campbell County, they should have filed a writ of mandamus, ordering the Gaming Commission to act, but they needed to probably wait for the horse. I mean, all of these things, it's easy to do that in hindsight. I know that. So I appreciate the time and consideration, and you should know I have a ton of information. But other states, you should find solace in the fact that other states are going through this too. Other states, Kentucky, our model that we like so much, I mean, they just did a massive rewrite of their statutes. And I'm trying to keep all of that organized and tracked in my mind of what happened there. But other states are grappling with this too, so we're not alone. But we need everybody to not just gloss through the things. Let's take our time and really understand what happened, and so we make informed decisions going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing us our time. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Well, I don't know, we go through here with Nick? Yeah. Well, who else publicly right now would like to speak on this? If you'd like to come up and take a seat, and please don't be shy.
I want to look and see what time it is real quick, sorry.
3:23.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Co-Chairman. My name is Kyle Ridgway. I'm the president of Wyoming Downs and 307 Horse Racing. I live here in Casper and was born and raised in Casper. It takes several hours to deal with the prior presentation. What I will say is, as the president of 307 Horse Racing originally, before we merged with the new ownership of Wyoming Downs, I was involved personally in permitting all of the Derby Club's locations. I did that myself. I didn't hire lawyers to go do that. I've been in Goshen County and all these other counties. So to the extent I can be a resource as somebody that's actually personally gone through all of these processes, from zoning to negotiating resolutions at the county to the lawsuit in Campbell County or what have you, our organization's happy to be a resource to answer questions or provide factual information. We did prepare a presentation that I think you all have, and I just kind of want to go over high level who our organization is and some basic statistics, but then be available for questions if you have any. So to start, 307 First, that's the organization that I am a part of. It's also known as Works or Wyoming Financial Group. We were the original investors in 307 Horse Racing before it ran its first horse race. So my organization was the one that brought the money. We invested, well over $50 million to build 307 Horse Racing from no locations since 2020. Wyoming Downs was sold, had a prior ownership group. It was sold last summer, and they recognized that it would be helpful to have people that actually live in Wyoming who operate businesses in Wyoming as partners to operate what they had bought. And so that's the nature of the joint venture. Is 307 First, my organization, financially partnered with the new owners of Wyoming Downs to jointly operate the two businesses. They do run separately, they're separate race meets, but I am the person in Wyoming responsible for the management of everything that happens between those two brands. That transaction closed February 1st, so I don't want to take blame for anything at Wyoming Downs that happened before February 1st, but post February 1st, there's a lot of changes that we've made, including going to 21 and up gaming only in all its locations since that time. 307 First is an organization that is focused on investing in Wyoming businesses. We have a number of operations in Wyoming, not just gaming, including an internet company and a data center and a number of other things. So the high level between these two companies is we run 2 race meets. We've invested in a lot of things in Wyoming, not just gaming. Our flagship location is the Derby Club on Pershing in Cheyenne, which it doesn't just include gaming facilities. It also has a brand new state-of-the-art, nationally recognized bowling alley, an arcade, family entertainment center, all associated with that as part of that retail complex. So our original investment case was to try to offer something new to the market. I think that's been successful. I know Wyoming Horse Racing's new ownership has invested a significant amount of money as well to upgrade their facilities. We're doing the same thing now over the next few years at Wyoming Downs to make those facilities nicer, cleaner, what have you. Our joint venture owns 20 pieces of real estate across Wyoming, and we lease 13 to 14 from Wyoming landlords. We have over 400 year-round employees. Full-time employees get fringe benefits, including health insurance, 401k, what have you. That's pretty rare in an industry that basically you're dealing with bartenders or tellers, is a lot of those folks. So you don't get health insurance if you tend bar usually or work at a restaurant, unless you're working for a big national corporate chain potentially. We also have a corporate office located in Wyoming in both Casper and Cheyenne. I work in that corporate office. We have about 25 people at corporate, including anti-money laundering response, security auditing, legal, accounting, what have you from a corporate perspective. So this entity between the two brands is committed to investing in Wyoming and having people located here. I think at a high level, that's really all I wanted to hit, is just kind of who we are. There's a lot of specifics we can get into to the extent anybody needs that. But, you know, I'm sensitive to this committee's time, so thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Any questions from the committee? Task force, excuse me. I have one. So the purses we're talking about and the situation you incurred when you started racing to develop the purses, can you fill us in on that history? Like what have you done to make the purses higher? You know, you said what your investments were, but could you elaborate on just your situation? Because we just heard about the purses and, you know, the purpose for horse racing purposes. And could you help
Yes.
with that? Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So 307 Horse Racing originally ran its first 16-day race meet at the Camplex in Gillette, May to June of 2021. We did not have any operating OTB locations or any revenue generating activity when we ran that race meet. We came out of pocket well over $1 million just for the meet itself. I think we were into this for $10 million probably, between getting some initial OTB locations open, running the race meet, fixing up the Camplex, coming out of pocket with purses and what have you. So I think, you know, and I don't have the number specific. I want to say it was like $800,000 or $900,000 in 2021 that we put up out of pocket for the meet, which was market at the time compared to where the other operators were. Since that time, that number's grown exponentially. I think this year, 2025, we're running right now, we're well over $2 million of purses that are available at the meet. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it adds a little color. Thank you for your comment. And if you had any other information, you could always forward it to the LSO, and they can disseminate that amongst the task force. Question? Oh, I'm sorry. Co-chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this packet here on the investment in Wyoming, I see that it says tens of millions of dollars invested in infrastructure and improvements. And my question is, did your company have any ties to Wyoming Business Council grants? I know in Casper, sometimes that comes through Advanced Casper. In different communities, it may have a different name. But did that infrastructure money come from the Wyoming Business Council through to your partnerships?
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Co-Chairman, no, we haven't received any business council money to this point. The border project that we're building which we just got recently permitted for, which is designed to attract people from northern Colorado to come up here. We may do some work with the Wyoming Business Council, get some grants to extend facilities from the city of Cheyenne. Currently, that facility is in the county only. So we're in a process where we're trying to figure out whether we can receive facilities or whether we'll build our own private facilities. So that's what that reference is to for that specific property. But we have another property in Goshen County that's in the county itself, not in the city of Torrington. And we've spent a significant amount of money getting that septic system and well water into compliance. Anytime you walk into one of these old bars, there's not a building that is worse maintained than a bar. You know, bars are designed to be operated, or even restaurants, designed to be operated by a family business. They make enough money to live on. Rarely do they have enough capital to put back into these properties. So usually when we acquire a property like the one in Goshen County, you're looking at 7 figures to bring it up to code, to put the security system in, to bring fiber to the property, everything that goes with that.
Further questions from the task force? Seeing none, I guess stand by.
Mr. Chairman, Lori Urbicite, I'm with Wyoming Horse Racing LLC, and to give you some background, Sherilyn Kaiser, who's sitting back there, and I were hired in 2012 by Wyoming Horse Racing. We were the lobbyists that brought forward to the legislature House Bill 2020 or 25 that legalized the HHR machines. And indeed, at that time, working with Representative Wallace from Campbell County and Senator Schipper from KC, it was about the purses. Absolutely true. And that is the only way we could justify the HHR machines, is because that's how we had to raise the money for purses. And those HHR machines are still directly tied to the purses. The money we raise supports the live races that we do at Sweetwater Downs. The money that 307 raises, whether it's here in Casper or in Evanston or Torrington, helps support their races in Campbell County. We paid out of our own pocket when we first started. We had to borrow money. We had investors, luckily. But yeah, we had to pay our own way. And that money is still tied to the purses. And it is what supports live racing today. In 2015, I did some quick stat lookups. The purses in 2015 were $1,645,727. That was in 2015 for the 2 operators at the time. This year, or last year, the total purchases in 2024 were $6 million between the 3 operators. $6,710,395. We are anticipating that our purses alone this year for Wyoming Horse Racing at Sweetwater Downs, and we have 18 days of racing planned, will be $2.9 million just of our money. And that's where that OTB money, that's where those HHR machine money goes. It does support live racing. It absolutely does. And any new operator is absolutely able to open HHR machines or OTBs in other communities. I don't think anybody can sustain 16 days of live racing with only 3 OTBs. It's just not sustainable. So we want to continue growing. High level from our company is that we believe in Wyoming. We have invested over $25 million in the facility that we built at the outskirts of Cheyenne. We're building a similar project in Evanston currently, and we're looking at spending $27.2 million on that. And no, we have not received one tax deduction write-off benefit from the state of Wyoming, nor have we received any grants from any municipality, county, or the state. This is all money invested. Yes, our primary owners, we were started in 2008 by Eugene Joyce, and he had 2 of his old high school friends that were partners with him. Eugene lived in Evanston. He and his father ran Wyoming Downs many, many years before, and finally came back to Wyoming hoping to restart live racing. Eugene built the company up as much as he could. He sold it in 2021 to three other investors. Eugene is still a partner in that organization. And yeah, they're from out of state. We spend a lot of money with the Wyoming Business Council trying to bring business into Wyoming, so I don't think we should be criticized for bringing money into Wyoming. They've spent over $52 million on 2 facilities alone right now. So we're proud of what we do. We have good benefits. We do the same as 307 and Wyoming Downs. We pay health insurance, benefits, retirement. We try to look at our employees as careers, not just jobs. We try to buy Wyoming first. We try to hire Wyoming vendors first. We do contribute to local charitable organizations. We bought 3 police dogs for Cheyenne here just recently that just graduated. We've contributed to the ranch here in Casper that is the sports complex. We look to our local operators, the managers, the employees of our local facilities, and ask them, charitable organization, who do you want to give to? And that's who we try to reach out to. So we are proud of what we're doing. We're proud that we have lived up to every promise we made back in 2012 and 13 when we said it is about the horses. The agribusiness is absolutely exploding over the Wyoming horse racing industry. We're hoping to get you some real hard numbers before your next meeting on what that actually looks like when we're talking about veterinarians and feed stores and farriers and the groomers and the trainers and the land leases and all of that. So we're hoping to get you more information about that because quite frankly, that's an area we've not talked about today, is about the agribusiness and what it's done for Wyoming horse racing and Wyoming horses. So that's my testimony. I won't take up any more of your time, but I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Urbichite. Right on the money.
Was it?
Yeah, right on the money. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, Representative Johnson?
Just a few questions. Thank you, Senator Chairman. The $52 million that you spent on facilities, what exactly are those?
Mr. Chairman, the facility at Swan Ranch outside of Cheyenne, it has a steakhouse, it has a donut shop, it has a large OTB, it's got a stage for entertainment. That cost us $25 million. It's quite a large facility, and we're not done with that. We're hoping to add on a hotel and another entertainment venue with that, and the same for the facility outside of Evanston. That is the cost of these buildings.
Follow-up? Oh, you're done? Co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to ask both of you, but just in one shot, so if you'll each take a turn. I would like to know who your proper owners are. I know that you're here as lobbyist and a president, but who are the proper owners of your companies?
So we are Wyoming Horse Racing LLC, and the 4 principal partners are John Sheldon, Peter Ligori, Nick, I hope Nick's not listening because now I'm not going to remember his last name. Nick Hughes, thank you, Nick Hughes, and Eugene Joyce. And they all have extensive background, especially Nick and Peter, in horse racing from Kentucky. Nick even was involved in horse racing in Argentina. So they do have extensive background in what they're doing.
Thank you.
Well, I got a follow-up to that question now, Lori. Where do these folks live? Because it's a common question you hear from
Eugene still owns property in Evanston. And I think he bought something up in a mountain somewhere where he and his wife go when it gets too warm. Peter, I believe, lives in Chicago, and I cannot tell you where. Nick is from Great Britain. You could tell that by his accent, but I'm not sure where he lives now. And I believe that John is in Nevada. And I still live right here in Casper.
Yeah, it's just a question that people,
Sure.
you hear all sorts of people's opinion, which is frankly is the truth. I mean, that's what they believe.
And our, Mr. Chairman, and our general manager lives in Cheyenne.
Thank you for that information. Any further questions from the task force?
Mr. Ridgway answered the same question.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I need to answer the question, right? Ms. Co-Chairman.
If you're willing.
as best as I can. So there are three main entities that are the financial partners in the 307 Horse Racing and Wyoming Downs entity, for simplicity, because there's a holdco and then everybody's partners at the holdco. So one of those partners is Wyoming Financial Group. That's the organization that I represent. That has three shareholders, one of which is me. The other two are Wyoming residents, Bob Moberly and Mike Kretzer. So we work in an office over in Warner Court. The other entity is ECL Entertainment on our gaming license. The principal managing members and owners of that are Mark Falcone and Ron Winchell. Ron Winchell is a well-known thoroughbred horse breeder and owner in the United States. He owns Winchell Thoroughbreds. He's had horses in the Kentucky Derby, just had one in the Preakness. They own and operate Kentucky Downs over in Kentucky, and they have some gaming operations in Las Vegas and New Hampshire as well. But they have a couple of tracks in Kentucky and now a couple of tracks in Wyoming, so they're a significant group of investors focused on the horse racing industry. And then there's a third financial partner, Clairvest Group, which is a group out of Canada that has helped provide some financing. It's a private equity group, for lack of a better word. And there's a partnership joint venture between those groups. And the local management is myself and the Wyoming Financial Group.
Kyle, to be clear, the Wyoming Gaming Commission would have all that data, wouldn't they?
That's correct. We went through an extensive background. I was laughing when Nick was talking about the 62-page application because I filled it out. It was much worse than what I had to do to get my law license.
Well, we'll make a comment about attorneys, so. Thank you, though, for the testimony. And that concludes, I guess, that group of questions. Now, there's a few people. Is the Jesse with LSO analyst online or here? Jesse, come on up. I'm sorry, you're new, it seems, and well, welcome.
Get set up here.
Continue.
All righty. Good afternoon. Chairman Cole, Chairman Lean, and members of the committee. My name is Jessie Schaefer. I am a research analyst with the Legislative Service Office. And I'm here this afternoon to provide a quick summary of a fact sheet that was in your packet titled Gaming Financial Security. And the fact sheet goes over 4 main points, and I'll summarize those pretty quickly. The first of which deals with state anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism laws. And that's going to be on the first page of your fact sheet there. But before we get into states, it's important to lay the foundation of a federal law named the Bank Secrecy Act. And this essentially lays the foundation for anti-money laundering laws in the United States. The crux is that financial institutions are required to report activities, suspicious activities, et cetera, to the United States Department of Treasury, and in particular, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN. And then getting into state laws, picked a fairly random selection of state laws to go over. The purpose of this was to kind of see what states had different legal gaming laws. And in addition to that, very specific anti-money laundering and even combating the financing of terrorism laws. So those states were Arkansas, Colorado, Nevada, Ohio, and Virginia. And all 5 of those states do classify money laundering as a mid-level felony offense with ranges here and there. And then the second point of the fact sheet goes into a feasibility study finding that was commissioned by the Wyoming Gaming Commission, Spectrum Gaming Group. It's been referenced a couple times today. The first recommendation in the fact sheet is actually in page 31 and 32 of the attachment B, or Appendix B, the Wyoming Gaming Expansion Study. And that recommendation followed a finding that Wyoming does not currently have money laundering as a criminal offense within the Wyoming Criminal Code, or Title VI. And the recommendation that followed was that the state of Wyoming may want to look into criminalizing money laundering that way. The third point in the fact sheet deals with the fact that there has been previously proposed legislation on this topic. In 2025 Senate File 116, it would have made money laundering and illegal investments criminal offenses, and both punishable by not more than 10 years imprisonment, $10,000 fine, or both. And the bill did gain some traction in the 2025 general session, but however, did die due to a deadline in February. And then the final point that the fact sheet goes over is another finding and another recommendation from the Spectrum Gaming Group study that recommends that the state of Wyoming conduct financial security assessments with gaming institutions. And the Wyoming Gaming Commission is taking this recommendation on in, they already conduct security risk assessments in the form of physical security, cameras, that sort of thing. But they will be adding financial security assessments to that in the form of compliance with the Bank Secrecy Act and anti-money laundering policies, procedures, and the like. And so that went kind of fast first time. I'm going to play the new card for as long as I can, but I will stand for any questions after that summary. Thank you.
Thank you. You don't have to be nervous. Task Force, anybody have any questions? Any clarifications that needed? No, not seeing any. Thank you very much for your testimony. Well, Nick, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please continue on.
So as Ms. Schaefer had mentioned, all of our online sports wagering and OTB operations fall under the Bank Secrecy Act, Title 31, so they're required by federal law to submit to certain reporting, suspicious activity reports, and currency transaction reports. They're required, as Mr. Ridgway said earlier, they actually have a dedicated person in their office whose sole job is nothing but to ensure Title 31 compliance across all of the properties for Wyoming Downs and 307 Horse Racing. Wyoming Horse Racing also has their accounting folks based out of the Cheyenne office, which is located in the Swan Ranch facility, that take on that task. As mentioned earlier, what we have done, every year we do kind of like a straw poll. It's a random poll of OTB locations that we do security assessments on. We have implemented some changes to our security assessments. Before it was physical security assessments, and now we've included stuff to ensure that the AML compliance is being maintained and that they're properly following federal law. This was brought up as far as the, Wyoming lacking the statutes for anti-money laundering. As it stands today, if money laundering was found in any one of these locations, we would have to investigate that, and then we would have to get the feds involved and then hope that the feds would take that through. If they refuse to take it up and they don't prosecute it on a federal level, then we wouldn't have anything to stand on, unless we could find some other underlying crimes, whether it be larceny or forgery or those kind of things that we could use Wyoming statute that we currently have. But outside of that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director. Any questions from the task force? Not seeing any. You've overwhelmed us with great information, Director. Thank you. Now it's, I guess, one other, let's move forward with public comment again, and then we'll circle back around. But I want to give a chance for the governor's office representative to come up and just state you came all the way this way, and I'd like for you to say hello to the task force and introduce yourself, and also then state maybe what some of the goals are that you believe you'd like to achieve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman. I'm Sarah Dorenzo. I'm the governor's senior policy advisor who handles gaming policy for our office. And thank you for the invitation to come up here and share some thoughts from the governor. It's been, frankly, a delightful conversation to be a part of today. and the question you've been asking are wonderful, and I think we're focusing in on the right areas. The governor has 6 main priorities when it comes to his policy positions on gaming, many of which you've touched on today. So I'll just briefly run through those. Number 1 is integrity and safety. The governor believes that all gaming and wagering should be conducted in an environment that upholds the highest levels of integrity and safety. And that includes properly licensing vendors, which we've talked about, and background checking. And that all licensed and regulated gaming participants should actively push back against the illegal gaming that's occurring, whether that be in their establishments themselves, because it threatens the integrity of the legal gaming market. For the governor, safety is at the front of his mind for horse racing, which is the bedrock of why we're all here today. And so the safety of horses in the horse racing must remain proactive, and any advancements that we can do to maintain the safety of the horse as well as the rider to prevent breakdowns in major industries is foremost. Second is a predictable and strong regulatory environment. Gaming, as you've heard today, is a welcome industry in Wyoming and contributes significantly to Wyoming's economy. The governor believes that strong regulation is necessary, though, to support this thriving economy because it protects the wagering public, and we have to offer clear, ethical, transparent gaming and wagering environment. But those strong regulatory controls are also good for industry. They deserve predictability. They deserve to know how and what they're being regulated on and have clarity in those laws. Some of those examples would be previous bills that have been drafted and worked on, clarifying statutory definitions, combining statutes, and continuing to give the commission the flexibility to respond to the actively changing and advancing gaming environment. Third is focusing on growth and responsible growth. We know that gaming contributes significantly to state and local revenues, and that's welcome, and they're very important partners in our state's economy. But exponential gaming growth, as we've seen, coupled with the challenges of rapidly advancing gaming on the landscape, and has outpaced our current statutory and regulatory schemes. And we need to really be thoughtful about what growth looks like. And before turning to new forms of gaming, we should look at growing our revenue with the footprint that we have instead of adding on additional forms of gaming to capture that revenue. And the governor really believes in striking the balance between live horse racing and historic horse racing. He believes that that balance is potentially needs to be taken a look at and make sure that we have the correct growth and response on the landscape. Any thoughts on legalizing new forms of gaming should include not just the revenue driving side of additional forms of gaming, but it should also take in wide consideration to the impacts of the community. We heard a little bit about problem gaming today, and we don't quite understand what's happening in our state yet and how that's functioning. And so special consideration should be given to that. Fourth, we talked about the Gaming Commission, and the governor believes that the Gaming Commission should continue to be well-resourced to uphold its current and growing statutory responsibilities. That could include increased budget authority, but I'm not sure this committee will be focusing on that. Fifth is related to local control and jurisdictional authority. The governor supports the efforts to grant more local control and have communities be able to have a greater say in what gaming looks like in their towns and how they'd like to shape it. The governor also upholds the importance of recognizing tribal jurisdictions over Class 3 gaming, and that is the gaming that takes place within the Wind River Reservation boundaries. The tribes are valued partners in Wyoming's gaming landscape. And finally, the governor believes that everyone who participates in or benefits from gaming has a role in responsible gaming. And so he's grateful for the elevated focus on responsible gaming, especially looking at best utilizing the money that's already being allocated for problem gaming. And with that, I'll conclude and take any questions, but thank you, and please consider our office a partner and a resource in this work.
Thank you, Ms. DiLorenzo. Any comments from the task force? Appreciate your partnership, and obviously we have a three-legged stool here that we have to get it through the process, and you're part of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And as promised, Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Afi Ellis representing Cowboy Racing. I just want to go on record saying that we supported the anti-money laundering bill that as it was advancing. We testified on the Senate side when that bill was before the committee. It was one of the recommendations contained in the gaming study. And as a legislator, when we vote on these studies, you don't want them to just sit on a shelf and collect dust. You know, the committee or the Spectrum Gaming Group produced their study in November of 2024. I think it would be very helpful for this new batch of legislators who are committed to learning about this issue to spend some time with that study. It has really good recommendations in it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, and thank you for your comment. Ask questions. Anybody online that wishes to comment? Ms. Vaughn? No? Anybody else in the room that wishes to comment? Seeing none, we'll close that section. I appreciate everybody's great input. This will continue. This is not going to end. And please stay abreast of the changing situations and participate in the process. So the last thing that I certainly would want is during the Senate session or the House, during the legislative session, that we'd have folks come in and say, I didn't get a chance. I wouldn't want that. I mean, we're probably going to get it anyway, but I think we give everybody every opportunity to speak their piece, and we can better then address it now instead of later. With that, we're going to move on then to, anyone else has a comment on the task force? No? Okay. We'll move on to committee discussion and staff direction. Is there anyone that has any comment towards that discussion? Senator Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess a couple of things that are on my mind as far as committee direction. I was hopeful that maybe at our next meeting, and this really is up to you and your co-chairman, but I was hoping that we could continue to talk about House Bill 85, or at least some of the considerations within that particular piece of legislation. I think there's, I mean, we just touched the tip of the iceberg today. There's a lot to go over. There's a lot more people we need to hear from, and a lot more we need to hear from the people in this room about that particular, just that particular piece of legislation, excluding everything else we want to talk about. So I was hoping at our next committee meeting, we could delve into that a little bit deeper, actually get down in the weeds and start looking at the provisions contained within that and what they all mean, and literally work the bill, work the issue, and get somewhere where we feel comfortable continuing the process on that. And then also, I'd like to do the same thing with the money laundering bill, although I don't think it needs a lot of work. It was worked fairly extensively by us, in particular in the Senate, but I'd like to bring it up for discussion, actually look at the language within that bill and spend some time in that too, Mr. Chairman. So those are my thoughts for end-of-day discussion.
Thank you, Senator Crago. And I too echo that idea, and mostly, obviously, it is the tip of the iceberg. And these are, HB 85 is a big issue all by itself. And I kind of agree with that idea that I would like to be prepared in our next meeting to talk about HB 85 and have a discussion, an in-depth discussion about just what that means and what avenues this task force may have to address the issues that didn't make it during the last session. Because local control to me is really, of all the issues, and we got lots of them, this is probably the one that resonates most with folks for local control. And this would be a way to start addressing that. And I'm not going to guarantee anything immediately, but we have to start somewhere. And I think the old, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So I think this is our first bite at that elephant. And that was my thoughts. Co-Chairman Lang, would you have any comments on those thoughts? Or what is your opinion, Co-Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My thoughts about House Bill 85 would be that I would ask LSO if is it possible that you could draft us kind of a table of what different pieces of local control could look like, taking into account House Bill 85, but then maybe some of the additional ways that we heard the county commissioner speak of today, or any other thoughts that come to mind, or legal recourse that we may have to be able to give additional tools to the county commissioners, municipalities? Could we draft that in table format?
Certainly, Madam Chairman, we could draft that and work with you to further refine it and look to our research division for ideas of what other states do, or reach out to the associations for their suggestions of what should be in your toolbox as a policy option.
So on that thought, maybe we come up with 5 different alternatives, maybe talk between the 2 co-chairs during this interim period between the meetings, and we can kind of ferret out what looks like a good course to take for discussion. What do you think of that, co-chair? And my other members of the House, what are your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we heard that the Board of Adjustments are actually in charge of any zoning issues, and I think that might be something we need to look at. And that would actually give local control back to the county commissioners and the mayors and the city council person. Is that right?
Yeah, that certainly deserves more conversation. I think it's obviously drinking from a fire hose, as they say, when it comes to this local control and zoning and what that means and trying to get control back. I think the conversation with 85, we can go down that road and talk about it, and probably with some time, it may be better understood just what the roadblocks are, right? Because I think we all have the same goal. The question is, how do we get there? But I think this is going to be something that we're going to have to discuss as a task force to come up and be good with it, right? We all have to have an understanding of why we're going that direction, whatever that direction is. But at this point, I think it's, at least I hear from everyone else that the control issue is the problem. How we get there, we'll discuss that. And it'll come with those alternative thoughts from the co-chair. It's a great idea. We can start off with that kind of smorgasbord of information, and then we'll have further discussions. And I guess we'll take it from there. So I agree. It's just a question of how we're going to get there, right? I mean, are we okay with the concept that we investigate and go down the road and start with that bill? Representative Webb, what say you, sir?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree. We need to, just reiterating what's been said, we need to keep very open minds with this. We need to look at this discussion from all angles and be able to try to come up with a solution that is viable to all the people of the state of Wyoming.
Thank you, Representative Webb. And I think it's good that we're trying to stay focused on one subject, because you've heard, I don't know, many avenues of going down a rabbit hole, which are very worthy topics, but obviously I think we have to economize our time and come up with a good product that we can move through the legislative process. And that's important. So I think the concept of keeping our view narrow when it comes to a topic like we're trying to deal with local control is, I think, the best strategy, in my opinion, to be successful. And I think with some work, and it is going to take some work because everybody comes here from a different perspective, like a different history that, got you here. And I think it's all valuable, but we all have to, have a conversation about it. So I think that may be the best course of action right now. We'll get some alternatives drafted up. If you could converse, if that's okay with the rest of the task force, the co-chair and I will look at the group of alternatives and try to come up with something that we think would be workable with the task force. And then we'll present that in the next meeting for further discussion. Senator Craigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my only comment on that is that whatever you and the co-chairman come up with, that we make sure we get that out to the public in plenty of time before our next meeting so that everybody in this room has ample, a couple weeks at least. I know that's our standard policy, but I just want to make sure we follow that, because otherwise we're going to be having a meeting and everybody in this room is going to be looking at it with fresh eyes. And so if we're going to do that, let's make sure we have, and us included, I mean, all of us up here, same thing, but that would be my only comment.
And agreed. I should have reiterated that. That is a critical importance, that everybody here who has a reason to be here, online and in person, you need to know what's going on as soon as possible. So you have time to think about it, time to come up with other thoughts, right? So you're just not caught with flat-footed, and you can come up and state your opinion, and hopefully we can work on a product that's currently better than what we have now. But yeah, certainly, as soon as that information is between the co-chair and I looked at, it goes to the committee, and as soon as that goes through the committee, have them get a chance to review, then it'll go out, and if you publish it to the general public, I think that's the best we can do. Is that amenable to you, Senator Craigo?
So I get, just to be clear, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure. So if the committee is going to help pare it down, then I guess that works. But my theory is whatever you and the chairman decide, you and the co-chairman decide's fine by me. I think you would, the same time you send it to all of us, you would send it, make it available on the website for everybody else to look at too, so they can start going through all of the different options. I don't think I need it ahead of them. In fact, I want them to have it the same time I have it, so that they can start ferreting out all the issues that maybe us as legislators don't understand, but them, whether it's county commissioners, the cities, industry, gaming commission, they all can figure out what's going on.
I said that only in respect to the task force, trying to keep everybody and respect everybody who's here and keep you in the loop, because we are part of the task force. But understood, I don't have an issue with that. I think we get it out to the public and to the everyone who is involved with this is our best course. And is any issue, LSO, with that thought?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely not. We'll work to endeavor to get it out to you and Chairman, your co-chairman, as quickly as possible, and take your direction from there.
And thank you. And also, I guess we, as co-chairman, we can talk to the House people and Senate people on our side, and I can have a conversation with them if that's probably helpful. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to address the mental health issue, and we're probably not using our money wisely. It didn't seem like we had a congruent way to address that, and maybe we should include that in our future discussions.
Representative Johnson, you're exactly right, but as you're seeing, the mountain we have to climb is pretty steep. So I think that we're going to have a number of, this isn't going to quit, this topics, and if hopefully we'll get some product out of here that deals with local control, but we are going to have to deal as a task force with all those other issues, like you stated, that, like we heard, there's many things of high importance, but and that certainly is one of them. Thank you for your comment, though, and I think we'll have a discussion about priority in just what we're going to do with, so we're all good with the thought that where we're going to put our focus. Like I said, I'll just say it again, I agree with you, but we can't go 15 different ways at once. That's my only thought about it. But we're going to have to tackle it. I think we're going to be here a while. So maybe you may be in for more than you bargained for. Thank you, though. Co-chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of thoughts about the money laundering bill. Just from LSO, can you give me directive on the reservation? They have gambling happening there. Are they under federal law, or would they also fall under our state law? Because we don't have the purview with the Northern Arapaho tribe.
Chairman Lean, the Bank Secrecy Act does include Indian gaming as a financial institution. So from the federal level, they're included in that.
Okay. Moving forward with our money laundering bill, would it be possible to draft some differences from Kentucky law, Maine law, and Arizona law versus the bill that is currently drafted from last year?
I think to that point, Co-Chair, we'll probably take the same tact as we did with the 85 bill, come up with some alternatives so it can be discussed in the next meeting with the same policy. I think we'll try to keep the same policy so everyone can expect a similar outcome. Any further discussion? If not, I'd like to thank this task force and everybody who showed up to testify and to explain your point of view. And we'll continue to need that from the governor's office, gaming commission, everybody who's here. It's all going to be an important part of this product. So thank you very much for attending. A lot of the folks here on this task force have to go long distances today to get to their next meeting. So with that, I'll call this meeting adjourned.